Hey, what's going on? Charles Austin here, and let's be fit forever. All right, so today I wanted to talk to you a little bit about preventing ACL tears, right? So, whether you are somebody who is an athlete, or maybe uh, your children are athletes, maybe you still behave like an athlete, or maybe you have an exercise regimen that is really strenuous, and it's something that requires lots of intense plyometric exercise and movements. An ACL injury is something that you probably have heard of at some point. If you follow any sports, basketball, soccer, tennis, football, any of those type of sports, right? If you follow any of those sports, you've probably heard about ACL injuries. So today I just want to talk a little bit about some of the best ways that we can actually prevent these injuries, give you a little background on those that injury as well, and give you some tips and some things and some strategies that you can start doing now, not yesterday, now, all right? But as always, before we get into that, let's make sure that if you're watching this video, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, turn those notifications on so that every single time I make a new stream, a new post, you're always up to date on the latest content, all right? So if anybody's watching over here, make sure y'all join over here on YouTube so you can be involved in the full stream with the screen share and all the information that we're talking about. But without further ado, you know me, I like to jump right in, all right? So let's talk a little bit about the actual injury, right? The ACL injury, right? So again, something that is very common, one of the more common injuries that you'll hear about that athletes and non-athletes alike may actually suffer, right? So what is the ACL? Well, if you look here in the image, you have a zoomed in image here on the knee, right? And you can see there are some different types of connective tissue that basically help stabilize the knee joint, okay? So as you can see right here, you can see the ACL, which is called the anterior cruciate ligament, right? And of course, if you watched my previous my previous video on soft tissue injuries, which I have provided a link to in the description below, you'll know that ligaments connect bone to bone, right? So basically what this does is it help connect the upper thigh bone to your lower leg bone, right? For the most part, okay? So as you can see in the image, when you have an ACL injury, there is a tear or a complete rupture, right? And that's the issue that we have with ACL injuries, right? So again, some of the symptoms that you may associate, or some of the ways that we can actually have an ACL injury, right? They normally occur in sports that have like sudden stops, right? Or changes in direction, things that require lots of agility, pivoting, twisting, jumping, things like that. Okay, and some of those sports, soccer, basketball, even skiing, football, stuff like that, right? So for folks that have actually experienced an ACL tear, lots of times they'll say, "Hey, I heard a pop," or there was like this weird popping sensation, and generally there's going to be, or most of the time, or all the time, you're going to see some swelling immediately, right? Followed by pain, et cetera, right? So some of the symptoms that, like we said here, the popping sensation, severe pain, and definitely if it happens during a training bout or a game or exercise or some type of competition, you're not going to be able to continue that activity, right? So there'll also be some rapid swelling. And one of the things that is extremely common is the instability when you're bearing weight. If you're trying to do anything that bears weight, if you're just getting up and walking or doing anything like that, there's some instability in that area, because if we go back to the image here, we can see that there's a large chunk of connective tissue that's no longer intact. And now, and one of the main functions of this connective tissue here is to stabilize the knee, okay? So those are some of the things that you will see should you ever experience an ACL injury. Hopefully it never happens, or if maybe you see someone or know of someone who has experienced one. These are some of the symptoms that you will notice, right? So some of the So let's go. So what should we do as far as preventing an ACL? All right. Well, before we do that, let's get into a little bit of background, right? A little bit of background on the ACL injury, right? Um, Around 200,000 people, okay, tear the ACL each year. Now, that's not a huge number. It's not into the millions and billions or anything like that, but it's not a small number. We're talking about almost a quarter of a million people are going to tear their ACL every single year. And again, some of the sports we've already talked about, uh, basketball, soccer, tennis, stuff like that. Lots of jumping, pivoting, and agility, things like that. About 70% of those injuries are non contact, right? So those are the ones. If y'all were watching the Super Bowl last year, right? Um, and who was it? Who was it? OBJ, right? He went and he was just running a route trying to catch the ball, and his foot hit the carpet the wrong way, and he had an injury. So that's what we talk about when we talk about non-contact injuries. Okay. Now the other thing about this injury is most of ACL tears occur in female athletes, right? So if you look here, overall, women are about 3 to 6 times more likely to tear their ACL than men. Okay, now this is the important part, which as we finish up the video and we get into some of the things that we can do to prevent ACL tears, this is the part that's actually important. So if you just started tuning in, or you just started tuning in to me and you hadn't been listening, well, here we go. This is a good time to start paying attention, right? Um, One of the main reasons that studies have shown that women are more likely to tear their ACLs is because of a strength imbalance in the muscles in their legs, right? And that's generally the result of having stronger quadriceps, which this is the muscle that's on the front part of your thigh, right? Your quads, as many call them. Stronger quads than hamstrings, and of course your hamstrings are on the back part of your thigh. All right, some people call them hams or hammies, right? So what happens is this imbalance again, having stronger quadriceps than hamstrings. This allows the shin bone to move a little bit too far forward, and this can cause an overextension of your ACL. Okay, and that's the issue. All right. So what we're going to do is later on we'll talk about some of the things we can do to help prevent that imbalance, and not just in women but also men as well. All right. So some of the things that we can do is focus on your form, right? Whether if you're landing, if you're doing any type of jumping activity, you want to do your best to land evenly on both feet, right? Also, when you're landing, you want to make sure that you're using your knees to kind of help absorb a little bit of shock. So make sure you bend those knees. One of the worst things you can ever do when you're jumping and landing is have straight, stiff legs and land just like that. Not a good idea, right? Bad for your knees, bad for your hips, bad for your feet, bad for all kind of things, right? You also want to make sure your body is aligned with your feet during landing. This basically means make sure that if your shoulders are pointing this direction, your feet also want to be pointing in the same direction as well. We don't want to have any twisting in our hips and our knees. You want to make sure everything's nice and square. Okay. So also keep your knees about shoulder width apart. We don't want them touching and close together, but we also don't want them too wide when we're landing. So those are some of the things that we can do when we're focusing on the jumping and the landing portion of exercise and any type of activity, right? So here's another thing here. If you are the parent or guardian of a youth or teen, right? And specifically, we're talking about the female youth, right? Those athletes, right? As we see here, teenage girls are 2 to 8 more times likely to suffer an ACL tear during sports than their male peers. Again, this talks about what we just mentioned a second ago, that muscular imbalance in their lower body. Stronger quads than those hamstrings, right? So some of the things that we can do for sure with our youth and our teens, specifically with our, like I said, with our female athletes, is you want to try to make sure that you are focusing on cross training. And what that means is you want to play different types of sports and do different types of training, right? So if you think about this, if you are always playing the same sport, if you're always doing the same type of training, you may be neglecting other muscle groups, right? Involved in your sport or your training regimen. Okay, so you want to kind of mix it up so that all of your muscles are trained. They're getting the strength, the endurance, they're getting the same flexibility that all the other muscles are getting. And now we can have a well balanced body. And specifically, if we're talking about ACLs, we can have a well balanced lower body. Okay. You also, and we're going to definitely get into this towards the end, healthy lifestyle. Right. There's nothing that a healthy lifestyle hinders. It only helps. And ACL injuries are no different, right? So you want to make sure your diet is well balanced. So fresh fruit, vegetables, lean protein, carbohydrates, all these different things are going to help to maintain not only healthy ACL, but healthy body as well to make your overall performance and injury risk, your performance go up and your injury risk go down, okay? But we'll dive into that a little bit more in just a little bit, okay? So some more tips here, all right? So again, other tips if we're talking about preventing ACL injuries, we want to make sure that if you are, putting your, if you're a parent of a youth athlete and you're putting them on a training regimen, and one of the things you want to focus on, we want to make sure our sport, maybe they're playing a sport where ACL tears are more common, right? Soccer, basketball, things like that, right? Tennis, okay? You want to say, hey, let's make sure we put them on a targeted strength program, okay? So we want to be doing exercises and training regimens that focus on building up the muscles and the joints and all the tissue that surrounds and supports the knee to make sure that we can have the lowest risk of ACL injury, okay? So if we talk about weakened knee ligaments, all right, knee bones, right, and associated muscles, all of that can make you more prone for ACL tears and injuries, okay? So again, we want to focus on the areas that help surround that knee. The quadriceps, yes, but definitely specifically the hamstrings, and we'll get into that, like I said, in just a second, okay? Definitely focus on balance, okay? So as you see here, I'm going to read this verbatim, right? The majority of ACL injuries that occur during sports activity result from a quick change of direction, a sudden slowdown, or a stop, faulty landing, or collision, okay? Now, as it goes on, improving balance and strengthening small muscles in the feet, the ankles, the legs, and the knees can help prevent unnatural twists and pivots that can cause ACL tears, and likewise improve resilience and reaction time as well, right? So basically all they're saying is the more stability you have, the better your balance, okay? This is going to allow all of these change of direction movements to be done better, okay? This is going to allow your reaction time to be better. It's not going to require as much twisting and pivoting, and this is going to take stress and pressure off your knee joint, which is what we want, okay? So balance training. Some of the things you can do is do simple exercises on one leg. Sometimes I like to just do bicep curls standing on one leg just to train my balance. So just little things like that. Don't forget to warm up. I've already posted a link to my video on soft tissue injuries, which touch on ACL tears a little bit as well. But I also posted a link in the description to this video to my video on how to actually properly warm up. Okay, so check that out as well. But you definitely want to make sure you warm up because cold, stiff, soft tissue, and if we're talking about muscles and ligaments here, are far more likely to experience injuries than after a warm up. So again, make sure you always warm up. Check out my video on how to properly warm up, okay? Proper footwear is also important. Lots of times people just neglect footwear. They say, hey, I'm going to run in the same shoes I ran in 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a year ago. No, all right? And they always use the same type of shoe no matter what type of activity they're doing. No, all right? There are specific shoes for specific types of training. So make sure you have the proper footwear no matter what you're doing, okay? And then you may actually, if this is the route you want to go, you may actually want to talk to a sports medicine specialist. And what they can do is they kind of can assess your joints and determine if they're operating properly. And if there's anything that's imbalanced, they can provide proper exercises, proper techniques, maybe even proper gear and bracing and things like that to help support your body a little bit more. So those are all some things that we can do to help prevent ACL tears. All right, so here's a little bit real quick before we get into some specific exercises and things we can do. This was an article here that you see was published by the Clinical Journal of Sports Medicine, all right, where it talks about the relationship of hamstrings and quadriceps strength to ACL injury in female athletes. So again, specifically targeting female athletes because again, they're more prone to these injuries. Okay, so I'm gonna skip to the conclusion down here. I'm not gonna bore you with the gory details, although I did have fun reading some of them myself. Right. Long story short, I'm gonna read this and then we're gonna break this down, see exactly what this means. Right. So as I said, overall in the study, the results of this investigation indicate that female athletes who suffered ACL injury subsequent, that just basically means after, to strength testing had a combination of decreased hamstring strength but not quadriceps strength. Okay? And this is comparing it to males, right? So what they're basically telling you here is that after they figure out who had the ACL injuries, they noticed that the hamstring strength was less when compared to the quadriceps strength. Okay, and again, hamstrings are on the back of your thigh, quads on the front. So why is this important? Well, one of the things that we really want to focus on when we're trying to prevent ACL tears is strengthening the hamstrings. Okay, so here's some easy exercises that we can do for hamstrings, right? And again, we don't want to necessarily neglect quads either because they do help stabilize the knee also. But there's always the data is in on the correlation between weaker hamstrings compared to quads and ACL tears. So you either want to make sure that your hamstrings possibly are a little bit stronger, all right, or maybe just keep everything in balance. Balance is always awesome. So try to work on getting that a little bit more balanced. But some exercises we can do for hamstrings. Squats are an exercise that's always going to work all parts of your lower body. Okay, your hips, your glutes, your calves, your thighs, all of that. So you can't go wrong with squats at all. Okay, kettlebell swings are cool. All right, single leg deadlift. All right, or you can do a regular deadlift. But this is a great exercise. You can do these with or without dumbbells. Great exercise for training your hamstrings. It also works on the flexibility of your hamstrings as well. Okay, bridges are great. You can do them with both legs, or you can even do single leg bridges. All right, also helping to activate those hamstrings and work on that flexibility and stability. Okay, leg curls, great exercise if you have access to a gym and this type of equipment. Great exercise for just isolating the hamstrings and building strength in that part of your body. Okay, and also you can work on leg presses as well. So as you can see, if you have a stability ball at home, you can focus on leg presses as well. Reverse planks are great as well. So plenty of exercises to focus on strengthening your hamstring. So again, if you want to start training today, you say, oh, I need to start doing these things right now, not next week, not later. Start focusing on doing a little bit more for your hamstrings if an ACL tear is something that you're a little bit worried about, right? So I talked about lifestyle a little bit a while ago, and I want to go ahead and finish the video talking a little bit about nutrition. Okay, so again, one of the best ways to my phone's ringing. Who's calling me? Leave me alone. I'll call you back. Sorry about that. So one of the best things you can do is make sure that you have proper nutrition, right? So, good nutrition, hydration, super important, right? Super important for keeping your your ligaments healthy, right? So here was another study, all right? So this one is actually done. Who is this one? This one, oh, no worries. Journal of Nutrition, right? So on this one, what they talked about was nutrition as it helps with tendons, right? Now we are talking about ligaments today, no big deal. All right, there are lots of similarities between ligaments and tendons. They're connective tissue, made out of collagen, et cetera, et cetera, right? So they talked about getting plenty of things like amino acids, proteins, vitamin C, vitamin D, manganese, copper, zinc, phytochemicals, which of course you can only get from plants. Things like this will help heal and strengthen your tendons and ligaments. So we're talking about now, not necessarily about stuff we can do on the outside. You know, if we're talking about strengthening our hamstrings and proper flexibility and proper form, now we're talking about strengthening our ACL and our ligaments from within. Okay, so here's some of the best foods that you can eat, right? And this is really for overall joint health. Okay, but obviously, before we even get into nutrition, one of the best things you have to do if you know that you may be more susceptible to an ACL tear, right, is you got to make sure that the weight that you're carrying is healthy. Okay, the more weight that we carry that is not a healthy weight, it's going to make you more likely to have an injury because you're overstressing your joints. So definitely want to make sure we do that. Now, also, we want to make sure we get plenty of sun. Why? Because we're getting vitamin D, okay? And one of the things that this helps us do is it helps us absorb calcium, which is important for overall bone health, right? But remember, if we're talking about bone health and we're talking about ligaments, we know ligaments connect bone and bone. So the stronger and healthier our bones are that are connected by our ligaments, the better off we'll be, right? We talked about staying hydrated already. Now, let's get to the specific foods, right? Garlic, onions, great for fighting inflammation, all right, if there's any pain in the joint, right? Apples, all right? We talked about ligaments and tendons being made out of collagen. Well, apples are one of those foods that helps build collagen. Super important, all right, if we're talking about strengthening our ligaments, and specifically ACLs, right? Almonds, okay? If we go back to our article here, our study here, they specifically listed manganese, right, in their study of building and strengthening this type of tissue, right? Well, here we go. Almonds, good source of manganese as well as fatty acids, okay? Chia seeds, okay? Amino acids, we talked about that in our study as well, okay? Also, pineapple is anti-inflammation. There's a enzyme in pineapples, bromelain, that is anti-inflammation, which is excellent for reducing pain. And if there's any injury already there, can help you heal as well. Okay, vitamin C. If we're talking about papaya or oranges, things like that. Again, we go back to our study. Vitamin C, vitamin D are both on that list. Different types of oils, bell pepper as well, bananas. All right, avocado. All of these are foods that we can incorporate in our diets today, right? Ginger, kale, all right? There's that manganese again. There's vitamin C again. So all of these are foods that we can eat that naturally help strengthen our ligaments, right? And at the very worst, if you're saying, hey, maybe I don't like some of those foods or it's a little bit difficult to get into my diet, there's always the option of taking a collagen supplement to help, again, strengthen those ligaments from within, okay? And be careful whenever you're picking supplements. Make sure you're reading those labels properly and you're understanding exactly what's in them, all right? All right, a couple of more things here real quick. We talked about these already. So if there are foods that you say, hey, I have an issue with eating these, I can't add these to my diet, there's always supplements that we can take. That's not always the best thing to do, but it's kind of secondary, okay? So we want to focus on getting plenty of zinc, protein, vitamin C, vitamin A, many of the vitamins that we've already talked about. Whew, that was a lot, right? All right, so again, if you missed anything real quick for a quick summary before we do any Q&A, remember, we talked about ACL injuries, right? Um, Very common among women and youth female athletes, right? We want to make sure we focus on proper form if we're doing any jumping, okay? We want to make sure that if you have a child or if you have any children that are playing any type of sports, we want to focus on making sure that they're doing a variety of sports and they're doing different types of training and focusing on a healthy lifestyle with healthy diet, plenty of water. Um, Balance is important. Strength training. We talked about the fact that hamstring strength is super important with reducing ACL injuries. So let's make sure we're focusing on incorporating hamstring exercises into our fitness regimen. Okay, and then also want to make sure that we're focusing on nutrition. Some of the specific types of nutrition we need to get focusing on ligaments would include amino acids, vitamin C, D, manganese, copper, zinc, and plenty of phytochemicals which come from pretty much any type of plant source you can think of, right? Whew. All right. So let's see if we can do a little Q&A, all right? And remember, when we do Q&A, we're doing this on ACL tears, or hey, if there's something else that's related to health and fitness and you say, oh, I need to ask this question, now's the time. As I always like to do, I keep my cell phone pretty handy just because I always get texts about, let's see, I don't need that. Okay. Let's see. Okay. So I do have one here where it says, what about ACL recovery? Because I've already had an injury before. Um, Nice question. Um, Number one, we want to focus on some of those foods, first of all, because your body's trying to heal that injury. So definitely you want to focus on the nutrition, okay? Now, just as well as this nutrition can help with preventing an ACL injury, if you've already suffered one, unfortunately, the same foods are going to help heal. So we want to focus on, like we talked about here, we're talking about the vitamin C and the D, and again, getting plenty of sun for the vitamin D. Um, Manganese, copper, zinc, all of those different things. So some of those foods included garlic, onions, apples, almonds, chia seeds, right? Pineapple, papaya. Um, can I? Yeah, I can send you this link. All right. Yeah, so I can shoot you that link if you were on. Okay, I can send you the link. Yes, I'll send you the link. All right. Um, so so that would be my first step, right? Focus on the nutrition, and then also make sure that when you're going through therapy, you're not rushing. Okay, you're taking your time, and then focus on after you start to get back to normal. Focus on building up that hamstring strength again. Okay, again, the nutrition is going to be super important. Follow the regimen of your physical therapist. Listen to what they're saying. A lot of people get impatient and they say, "Oh, I want to get back into the game. I want to get back to doing whatever I'm doing." Don't rush it. Okay, nutrition. All right, focus on those hamstrings, get your strength back, and then again continue the same procedure. Continue the same things that you were doing during rehab to continue strengthening that area as well. All right, but good question. Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna let y'all go. Again, check out the videos that I posted here on soft tissue injuries. There's a link in the description below. Also, uh, the link to properly how to properly warm up. That link is also in the description below. As always, like I said, make sure y'all like the video, subscribe to the channel, notifications on, because every time I do one of these streams, Monday and Wednesday, 6 p.m. Central Time, Saturday, 1 p.m. Central Time, you'll be notified, okay? Also, make sure y'all visit fitnesscharles.com where you can find out how to join my Fit Forever family. You can also figure out how you can try my 3 times a burn challenge 2 weeks for free. And also make sure you follow me on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter at Fitness Charles. All right. I will check y'all out next time. Again, Wednesday we'll be back at 6 p.m. Central Time. Have a good day. Let's live and be happy. And